This is the ad hoc committee for Ann Drive. It's beginning at 6:05 on Thursday, May 14th, in the third floor caucus room, City Hall. The committee members are myself, Mary Teicholz, Councilman Dwayne Perkins, and Councilwoman Colleen Stanley. We have with us Corporation Counsel Les Pinter. We have the Director of Public Works, Antonio Iadarola. We have Mayor Boughton with us. Ex officio, our President Joe Cavo. Ben Chianese, ex officio also. Mr. Hades, the petitioner, and members of the public. So I guess I will begin by getting a little information on this from Mr. Iadarola.
I think what you may want to do is open it up to your petitioners so we can kind of really have an understanding of what exactly is being requested here. Because we've had a lot of discussion about this issue, but I think we need to really hear what the intent of the petition is.
To begin with, I also would like to read into the record that the Planning Commission gave this a negative recommendation because they said they don't have the information necessary to make a recommendation. That's all the sheet says. Mr. Is it? Pettis? Please.
I've been living in Ann Drive for 25 years. And when I first moved there, the condition of the street seemed fine to me. It wasn't until later that I found out that the street was not really owned by anybody.
Yeah, could you speak a little louder, please, for the record?
So in subsequent investigation, I found that the property had been developed by 3 different developers. The street itself dates back to 1976, at least according to the maps downstairs in the land records room. Over that period of time, the city has been providing other services such as snow plowing, sanding, and occasionally pothole repair. However, the street's deteriorated to a point where it really needs to be redone, if not completely, at least get a once-over with asphalt. The point of our petition was first to establish ownership of the street. We would like the city to assume ownership as it exceeds the minimum standards for width and curbing. Other standards, the grading are in question, but the rest seem to fall within the city of Danbury standards. Okay. If anybody has any other questions to ask me.
Mayor?
I just have, just to sort of flesh it out for the committee, the grading you said you're not sure about, and you may not know this, but did the grading, did it meet the standards of the time whenever the development was approved? It must, to put that road in there, was the road there before the condos were there? Or
yes, it was.
Was it necessary for the condos to have the road, in other words?
Oh, no. The condos were put in later. The street dates back to 1976. The condos were put in around 1979 or 80.
Okay, because you said 72 earlier, so, because you did a lot of research on this. 76? Okay.
Yeah.
So the street goes back to 76, the condos are not there at that time?
Not there.
Just sort of that cut in there?
That's right.
And it's dead ends down there?
Right.
So is there, I haven't been all the way in, is there some single-family houses on that? No, just...
They're all multiple family houses, either privately owned houses or apartment buildings.
Okay.
The condos comprise half the buildings on the street.
Okay.
There are a total of 23 living units, apartments. And just over half of those are condominiums. One is a 2-family house. The rest are all 3-family.
Okay, so it's a mixture of condos in your development, and then some 2 or 3 families, is that?
2 or 3, right.
And the 2 or 3 families, do they predate the condos?
Yes.
I'm Svetlana Riccio, and I also live on Ann Drive. I was lucky enough to work for the city for many years, and a previous corporation council had done some research, and there was a bond on the street that the city allowed to lapse in 1986. And Mr. Hedges and I would probably have to come and spend several days going through city documents to find what Attorney Casagrande had found. And at some point in time, amongst the many developers on the street, some city criteria were overlooked, I guess is the nicest word, and there is a problem with a right-of-way. So I don't know if Mr. Aird...
I haven't done the research on it, but usually when something goes bad on a road, it leads to the city not taking it over. So it might have not been constructed correctly. There might have been some issues with a right-of-way. I know for a fact that I think there's a deck built over a sewer easement, which actually has one of our sewer pipes in it, which is a substantial issue for us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the right-of-way issue that you're talking about, yeah. So, I would have to really, quite honestly, do all the research from the beginning all the way to where it is now. The right-of-way research, the easement research, grades, drainage, width, curbing, all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And in City Ordinance 1734, there is a Section C, which says that the city could, should, would take over with no penalty to the resident. So that was added to the city ordinances in the 1990s regarding Churchill Road over by the lake.
Madam Chairman, do you know who pulled that bond? Who, if the road was prior to the... It was a builder. It was a builder, yeah, but I mean, the builder who had the bond may not have been the builder who built the condos, right? Because the road predates the condos, so...
Right.
There were 3 or 4 different developers involved.
So somebody out of those had a
bond. At the request of...
Oh, maybe it's a condition.
At the request of either the planning commission or the zoning commission.
Got it. Saying you can build this, but you got to take a bond out, you got to fix the road.
Right. And
Or it could have been the original bond that was when the road was constructed.
Huh.
Yeah.
We'll have to research
Would
that.
a sewer be considered a storm drain?
No, a sewer drain is very different than a storm drain.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I do know that there is a storm drain that runs behind our building.
Yeah.
I think that's what you may have been referring to. I don't remember seeing a sewer.
Just going back from a very quick look at this, and a quick look at the file, it's quite extensive. It looked like there was a sewer, sanitary sewer that conveys, house waste to the plant that was actually built underneath one of the decks. And as you know, we don't allow anybody to build over our easements, because if we ever have to have access to that pipe in an emergency situation, we want to be tearing down a deck in order to get access to the pipe. So that is a major, and was a major issue. It looks like through the file, that's quite a bit of conversation about that easement and why it was violated.
is there anything that the city can do to maintain the road, which is deteriorating yearly?
Well, that's what
I guess that's
here
the question,
Trying to try
yeah.
to figure out.
And Lana, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but we're already currently plowing it and sanding it, is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, we do what's referred to as very, limited maintenance.
That was one of our
That's one of the
yeah.
roads that got grandfathered in. Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Pinter, could you just review a little bit about the 17-34 or anything else you would like to add?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lana had mentioned that section of the Code of Ordinances, 17-34, and without knowing the details of the bond, as Antonio indicates, and other details, this section generically, and you got to look at it just generically, okay, may not apply to this case or other cases, but generically, that particular ordinance was adopted in order to attempt to resolve problems where there has been was a bond on the project and the bond lapsed, or the bond was not available. And that was intended to resolve, or try to resolve, that issue by virtue of allowing the parties, the city and the owners on that road, to work cooperatively to try to fix the problem. And fixing the problem involves a number of issues. One would be that the owners have responsibilities to present to the city easements or other rights that the city needs to proceed to do any work on that road if necessary. The city engineer, the director of public works, would also have to provide some certifications regarding how wide the road has to be. There's a certain minimum width that the road, even under those circumstances, has to have. There are certain expenses that the owners of the road would have to incur in order to present documents to the city in order to get the city's assistance to comply with that section. So it's a cooperative effort. There are certain stipulations that are in the law to get that done. That is an avenue. It's unclear whether it's an avenue that's available in this specific case, but it is out there in these kinds of cases where there's a bond that's not available. So it's possible that could be available to these folks as they could be elsewhere. But again, it's rarely used, frankly. But it is in the law to try to solve these kinds of problems from aged and lapsed bonds. That's the generic provisions of 1734 that they cited.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody in the committee have a question?
I do. Through the chair, maybe to one of the people that live on the road. Does anybody live there now that was originally there in the very beginning?
Oh, no.
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 So you
She's been
would
here
happen
longer
to
than
know
I have.
what the original intentions of the road were when you moved in or when you bought it? Did you know if it was presented to you in your the paperwork when you bought your place? The deed, right. Thank you. It should be in the deed whether or not it was a city road or if it was intended to be a private road. Do you have your own paperwork, your own original paperwork for what you bought? Might be helpful.
To my recollection, there was none.
The reason why I say that, I used to live on a road that was semi-private, like similar to yours,
Right.
and it was in my deed that it was a private road.
As I recall, there is nothing made, no mention made within the condo paperwork that I got that it was not a city road. I think it was never mentioned as such. The road was not mentioned
At all.
at all. The developer who built the last 4 or 5 buildings on our road did not telescope. So 5 Ann Drive is a separate condominium association from 7 Ann Drive, from 6 Ann Drive. So our 3-unit building does our own maintenance and lawn care from the building next door to us.
Wow. So you each are separate
That's very
associated lots
unique.
at
Very, very unique.
Right.
You can't do that anymore now,
No.
We don't do it.
You're not allowed to not telescope.
No, because
To join
because what
conjoined
happens
buildings.
is one person stops paying their fees.
It's a nightmare.
Your water bill,
Mhm.
whatever the issue might be, the whole association collapses.
Okay, I
We've had
have a
that.
follow-up question.
Through the chair to Les Enter. Would you happen to know, like in a lease or in a deed, don't they usually have, your street address or your road, your lot from this point to this point on such and such a road? Shouldn't it it's usually in there?
There's usually a description of the property that identifies
I mean,
the
that
location.
may be
and the
helpful to
address.
us in our investigation to try and figure out what the originality was meant for. You
They-
can try and find those documents?
They name the street, but they don't say that it is a city road or private road or not a road.
So you looked through your documents?
Yes. after I had purchased the unit, it did come up at, I guess, the closing or whatever, that it was not an approved road, and at that point it was too late in my personal negotiations to do anything about it.
Do you know, and through the chair, just, do you know who the builder was for the condominium?
It was
Did you buy it new, or?
I'm the original owner of my unit, and it was built by a gentleman developer from Stanford, who, it was in the 70s and 80s during the real estate boom, and individuals who had money to spare were building on spec.
And just to follow up, I don't know if this makes a difference, but all 3 condominiums were built by separate developers, or were they all through the same developer?
Well, our building, the 4 buildings that are condos were built by the same gentleman.
And what year was that?
I moved in 1981, and I got
That wasn't too long.
the last available condominium on the street.
Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair to whoever can answer this, what was the dollar amount of the original bond?
According to the petitioners, it was $87,000. I've not seen the bond, I can't verify that. That's what they said in their letter.
That's the copy.
And if I could, through the chair, follow up.
Can I take a look?
Well, just a point of quick clarification, just because the original bond was $87,000 doesn't mean that the balance of the bond...
Right.
Right, well, that's what that's what my follow-ups are going to
Okay, yeah,
lead
because
into
usually
about-
there's bond releases, bond reductions, so...
Right. So if I could, through the chair, did the bond expire, or was it returned? Do we know to the developer?
We don't know for a fact what happened to that bond. There's a variety of possibilities, Joe, that could have happened to that bond.
And if I could follow up again, what was the date the bond was taken out on? Do we know that?
70, looks like 74.
So then it was prior to the condos being constructed.
73, December,
Right, so there's...
approved as a subdivision by the Planning Commission of the City of Danbury on December 21st. The bond in the amount of $87,000 was set by Planning Commission, so it was 73, 74.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Madam Chairman, I don't know that we're looking for a total revamping of our street, but we would like it maintained so it's not pothole city, so that we don't lose tires. I mean, thankfully, the city did fill 2 of our major potholes so that there aren't possibilities of
We're not going to lose
axles
anybody
or
at
whatever
all.
being
Send out a
damaged.
link for 'em.
I just want to comment, I was out there, I took a look at your road.
No, I just wanted to say who you were.
I was out there, I did take a look at your road, and my question is to Mr. Iadarola. What would you think that, what do you feel needs to be done to the road to bring it up to code? Or is there a does that road need to totally come to code with today's?
Typically, when we accept a road, we do exactly that. Yeah, we look at widths, grades, on the drainage, make sure the drainage is up to our
Right.
current standards. Yeah.
And just to follow up, I understand what you're saying, but this is now a road that is already existing. And that
Doesn't matter. Yeah, there's a couple here that just went through this with their road. And we went through the full design of their road, so we met current standards. It was done as an assessment, and that's the way we handle these roads, regardless of what condition they're in. If the residents on that road want that road to be brought up to or be taken care of and owned by the city, then it has to meet the minimum standards that are within our regulations.
I think the circumstances with Cannondale was a little different than this.
Same issue. The only thing is
There was no bond though on that.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the bond is irrelevant. We're talking about standards of a road.
And what do you think needs to get done over there?
I really don't know without surveying it.
Oh, yeah, taking a look at it.
Well, I'd have to send my survey crew out there and determine what the slope of the road is and inspect the pipes and...
I was out there, it looks to me like everything is done, just looks like only a binder course was put down originally, and I know that the city probably would require 2 courses of asphalt. I mean, the drains are there.
Right.
I don't know about the width, and I don't know about sidewalks
Well, we
or
don't
any
know
of
if the
that.
pipes are big enough. We don't know
Right.
where they discharge to.
Well, look,
You know.
I mean, the condo was put in also. I mean, wouldn't the pipes be, you would think that the pipes would be, I guess we need to do our homework.
I guess we need to do our
That's what we
homework.
need to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unanswered
There's a lot of
questions.
speculation
But
there.
we're here, and that's a good thing. And I think that, we could possibly get some answers now that we're here, and maybe get this to move forward, and hopefully.
Councilman Cheney?
Thank you. I mean, I was part of basically the same procedure which you're going through here probably 2 years ago. Basically the same thing where a developer had a subdivision. This is the Kenmere piece, same thing. There was a developer who was going to build a subdivision. The developer then sold off each piece, then sold the major piece to another developer who built a larger condo. Never finished the road. So the road was abandoned. And this is back in the 40s and the 50s, similar to your piece. And what we were told that a private road is the ownership of the residents who live on that road, who abut that piece, which would be your residents. So my question would be, how many residents live in these condos? How many units are there?
23 units.
That's everybody, the whole street. So wouldn't it be a responsibility of those units to assess the unit owners to maintain the street? I mean, my situation was there's only 7 homes. Yours is almost 3 times that size, which is
Madam Chairwoman, with all due respect, I think Mr. Sinisi's situation is not what's on top of it.
But the question would be is...
Secondly, I think the issue is that when Mr. Ariarola surveyed Kenmere, the problem was it could never be brought up to city standard without a significant millions of dollars investment. I mean, I may be wrong.
Yeah, it was right. And
I think we don't know what Ann Drive looks like, and I think the discussion from Mrs. Stanley was that let's go do our homework and then find out. So I think it might be jumping the gun.
Yeah, and also there
We
was
know
an
where you're driving at.
abandonment.
You're looking at a disparity of Kenmere to Ann Drive, and you're concerned that Ann Drive might get something that Kenmere couldn't. But these are, right off the bat, 2 vastly different differences. There was no bond at Kenmere. I don't think they were building condos in the 40s. I don't think
Well, yeah, they were. They were the big development.
I don't think there was any. I don't think there were any. There were no condos in Kenmere.
It was single-family homes.
But there's no condos there.
No, but it's Lake Place.
But you said that they were building condos there.
But it became Lake
Okay.
Place.
So, I mean, we would probably have to go back and get some homework done.
And there's a big difference, we have to do the title work on this and find out who actually owns the right-of-way that the road is built on. There's a big difference between, what Mr. Chinese was talking about, it was a pure abandonment of a road. And council here is a lot more adapted at explaining this, but in layman's terms, it actually reverts back to the property owners on either side of the road to the center line of the road. That's the way it does, but that may not be the case with you. It was the case with a lot of property in the 1930s and 40s. Developers just walked away, and
lake properties too, Mr.
a lot of lake properties, very common. We have quite a few of those in the city, so that may not be the case here. So there's quite a bit of work that we have to perform to really kind of get to understand who has ownership and title of it. What was the bond pulled for? Was it released? Did it expire? Was it pulled? What was the circumstances to that? So there is a tremendous amount of research that, really has to happen. And, depending on how this ad hoc committee moves and what recommendations come out of the full common council, we'll act according to what direction they would like us to go. But it is an extensive amount of research that would have to take place, and inspections.
Councilwoman?
Through the chair to Mr. Iadarola, if the residents of Ann Drive were to repair their own road, they would not have to bring it up to code,
That's correct, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they were to just go out and get a bid and see how much it was, I mean, for the city to do it, it's extensive, very extensive. But if they were to go out and get prices on having their road, done, it's probably a lot less. How does that work?
Well, I think what I would do if I lived on a road is I would try to get some consensus of all the residents that use the road and come together after determining what the cost is going to be to put a binder and put a final course on that road, and then try to have some cost sharing among residents. That's one way to do it, and we could help you with a spec. We can help you come to with a contractor. We can maybe try to get our low bid contractor to come in and do the work for you guys. That is an option to you. But if you're looking at the city to come in and perform the work and take ownership of the road, then all of the design criteria would have to be met, much like, what we did on Cannondale. It was a full-blown design. Widths have to be met, grades have to be met, drainage requirements all would have to be met. It's a pretty extensive process. So, those are pretty much the two options. One would be more immediate, where you guys kind of all chip in and you have somebody perform the maintenance work on the road. And you have some time to pursue the balance of maybe the city taking it over. But,
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think there is the issue of we're currently plowing and sanding it. And I think that's a slippery slope when we begin doing that. And that's one of the reasons why we, capped doing that back in '03. Because now we get into the, what happens is new people in the neighborhood and they go, well, of course it's your road. You plow it, you sand it, you own it.
Yeah.
And now we're on this slippery slope of who owns it. So I think Mr. Stanley's point at the very beginning of this conversation was on point, which is we need to do our homework and find out.
Yeah.
We did. I would love to see us do our homework on it, but my point in being is that the city could also, and I think I have the section 2-134, do something like they do with sewers and assess.
Assessment.
And now, keep in mind, if they do all of this work, and this has happened before, it costs lots of money to do it. They come up with an assessment and it's way out of your budget because of bringing it to code. So it may be something that you might want to look into on your own, because, like I said, if you have your road redone on your own, it doesn't have to be brought up to code, but it will be livable. So it's just something that you should start to do your own homework on, a suggestion. And we're going to continue to do our homework and find out if we could figure out what happened.
Councilman Perkins, you have?
Yeah, I was on that road earlier today just to get a look-see. It's an old road. As far as
traffic today.
as far as whether or not it needs more storm drains or things like that, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, Mr. Iderola has a trained eye. His folks have more eye for that. But I think we're all on the same page here. We need to figure out exactly ownership and just do a little bit more research in that area to figure out exactly what's going on with that. That's really it. It's a couple interesting points as far as whether or not the unit owners decide to fix or have the city fix, because either way, costs will be borne, and we have to figure out who's gonna incur those costs. I mean, just us going out to do the survey and things like that, it's gonna cost money. Who's gonna pick that tab up? So, big road ahead of us.
Excuse the pun.
And if I can also ask, is it through Mary, to Les, if we do go ahead and do all this homework and if we were to assess it and
Do an
throw it
assessment
out there,
project?
and then you decide that you can't afford it, then it's over, right? It can never come back before us?
Well,
Is it
well,
something
not
similar
only-
to the sewer?
It is very similar, yes.
Oh, you have to wait 5 years, okay.
But as you know, we have an overwhelming list of assessment projects.
Right.
And they would end up being put at the bottom of the list because we go from first come in, first in, first out. So, there's projects we're pulling off today that were actually assessment projects created in the 1980s.
Right.
Sewers, mostly, because they're very complicated. But, so, that won't give you any immediate resolution. But it puts you in a pipeline to come to a reality of the municipality owning your road. But in the end, we're going to solicit what the total costs are going to be, and we're going to get an assessment back to everybody. And after waiting all that time, you may find out that it's just a lot more than you would want to spend to take the road in its current condition and have it upgraded so the city could take it over.
That would be, Mr. Chairman, that would be a little putting the cart before the horse. I think, again, just to emphasize, we got to measure the road, we got to see what's out there. I think that's...
I'd like to find out how far
That's the minimum...
out of regulation it is.
Right. And that will dictate, that'll drive all of that.
It's going to give you different options.
Les, I think, maybe we can get legal to do some title searches out there and review some of those deeds. I think Mrs. Stanley brought a point up about, what was on those original deeds that it shouldn't be too hard to do. It's all downstairs in our town clerk's office. And then I think also do some research on the issue of this bond. There very well could have been a drawdown on the bond to a certain point, and then they just let it lapse. Maybe they got it, maybe they drew it down for drainage, they drew it down for site work. Maybe we get lucky and we'll find
Maybe
it
it's still
stuck in there. Fortunately now, everything's computerized and it's all automated, and we can track, we'll be able to track that for
Yeah,
forever.
1973.
They had stuff duct taped and, taped to the wall, and then they retire and they forget, and it's in their papers. So I think we got to do a little work on that. And Danny Casagrande, if he did the original, we can just call him and say, what do you have on it? He probably still has a file kicking around somewhere. So maybe he's already done a lot of that research.
Saves everything.
He does, so let's at least get to the bottom of that side of it. And, you never know. The document could pop up and say, oh, it's a city road. But probably not. It's probably going to be a limbo thing.
But at least we're having this talk and it's going to move forward.
Does anybody have any more questions?
Sorry.
Does anybody have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to continue this.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? What usually take us?
Yeah, that's a point of order question. I think you have to give instructions to Les or Antonio what you want them to do.
I would like to make a motion, I can change that. The list that he just gave. We need to
Title search?
do title search.
Contact Attorney Casagrande and determine if he has a file regarding the bond. Recent research on the bond, which will include. And Antonio will
I
get some
would like
of his
to get a
crews out
report
there.
from Antonio.
Some kind of report from him.
Yeah, okay.
And research on the bond, you said that, right?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens.
I have got it done.
Great.
Do I need to second it again?
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Thank you, Councilman Chin. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
A motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.